What's up, movers and makers? My name is Connor. I'm a maker, entrepreneur, and designer based out of Boston in the United States. And on this channel, we talk about tactics and tools for starting and growing great businesses. Today, we are talking about conquering possibly the greatest distraction there is to anyone trying to do anything meaningful with their day and their life. This thing. If you're anything like me, you love this thing. You love this magical glass brick. You love Twitter and YouTube and email and finding great podcasts and new apps and all of that awesome stuff, which is amazing in moderation. And if you're like me, you don't know what moderation really means, and you are subject to the wonderful design, the wonderful, addicting, intentionally captivating design of most of these apps meant to keep us trapped in them for as long as possible and accomplish nothing good with our lives. So the best app on this phone is one called Forest, and it is one that allows me to recapture more hours of my day, spend less time on this thing, and ultimately just have a better existence. So first, I'm going to talk to you a bit about how this app works and why I love it, and then I'll tell you some of the use cases that I found to be most useful, most productive throughout the day. But first, a quick overview about how we can think about discipline and decision making and designing our environment to make both of those things easier. So we're all familiar with the phrase, you are the sum of the 5 people that you interact with most, right? And the idea of that is the people we surround ourselves with, the people we see the most, their attitudes, their mindsets, their words, they influence us, right? And so if we surround ourselves with negative, low achieving, unambitious people, then that becomes somewhat of our worldview. And if we surround ourselves with high achieving and positive and kind folks, then that is what we will be modeling, right? Because we're inherently tribal and we want to fit in with the people that are around us, I think is the fundamental dynamic at play there. But this idea of the things around us influence us can be taken to an even broader level, right? It's not just the people, it's the things, it's the clothes, it's the stuff on your walls, it's the things you watch, it's what you listen to, it's the smells. All of these things come together to create this synergy that is positive or negative, that is empowering or disempowering. And so the more we can think consciously about our environment and how we can design it to support our goals, the better. So case in point, when I first started thinking about how to change certain behaviors, I thought it all came down to discipline. I thought it all came down to willpower and being strong and saying, I want to eat less sugar, so just gosh darn it, I'm going to ignore the Oreos in the cupboard and I'm going to eat less sugar. But over the years, that failed a lot, right? It becomes difficult. The more things you are trying to improve, the harder it becomes to stay in control of all of them. Now, a more stronger, more disciplined person than I, doesn't have an issue with this. I'm sure Jocko relies on discipline just fine. But for me, the more I can remove discipline from the equation, the more likely I am to succeed at changing the behavior. And that means making the environment as conducive, if I want to do the behavior more, or as discouraging, if I want to do the behavior less, as possible. So for the case of consuming sugar, right, if I have Oreos in the fridge, the likelihood of me eating them, very high. Very high. But if there are no Oreos in the cupboard, I can't eat them, right? So if I never buy them and I never bring them home, I can't eat them. I've removed discipline from that equation altogether. Same thing with alcohol. If I want to drink less delicious beer, I just shouldn't buy the delicious beer, right? Like, it's a lot easier to say no if yes isn't even an option. But if it's in the fridge, then I have to be disciplined about it. And then I bring in the opportunity for failure. And it goes the same way for things I want to encourage, right? If I want to encourage more positive, more optimistic, higher achieving thinking, how can I bring in those inputs that encourage that behavior? For instance, this wall of crazy Post-it notes behind me is a whole lot of reminders about mindset and business and strategies and frameworks that I can use to achieve the things I want. And I have those there because I have a tendency to read something interesting and forget it 5 seconds later. And that wall, I just look over once or twice a day. I skim the notes, and I'm reminded of something useful, something provocative, something empowering. And so that's right there. But this overall mindset of how can we change our environment to make things as easy or as hard as possible is a really powerful tool for things like wasting less time on my phone, right? And that's where Forest app comes in. Let's go dig into that. Okay, so if we go into the app, this is the welcome screen that we're faced with. And basically the app has 2 parts. It has a typical timer work-esque function And then it has a gamification component that adds this emotional piece to that timer. So the timer piece is straightforward, right? We have the screen, we select any period between 10 and 180 minutes, 10 minutes and 3 hours. And then once that timer is set, we plant the tree and our timer is going. So if we leave the app at any point while that timer is running to do something else, after a few moments, we will get a reminder to return to the app. And if we don't return to the app within those, whatever it is, 5 to 10 seconds, the tree will die. It will die and turn into a barren husk of a tree that could have been. And if we survive and we leave this app open for the duration of the timer, we get a nice, big, healthy tree. Eventually, this sapling you see here will grow into a full tree and join our forest, our garden, which we can review after the fact. And so you don't have to leave. You can lock your phone and come back to it, and it still keeps counting. You just can't leave the app and go anywhere else, which is what makes it such a powerful control. So that's the time work component. And then the piece that really is effective is the gamification. So we're planting a tree right now, but for the sake of this, we will give up and kill that tree. And so if we back out, we have a choice of trees first off, which adds a fun bit of variety. And then the longer the duration that you set your timer for, the more developed each tree gets. So you're incentivized to set a longer timer rather than a short one because you get a larger tree rather than a small one. And then as those trees succeed, they enter into your forest. So this is today, 2 successful trees and 2 dead trees. You can see even the dead trees are different. And if you look back over your year, you can see kind of this cool visual representation as well as some statistics down here about how many hours you have been focused. Mine were a little bit off because I had 2 accounts running for the longest period. My main account, which has now somehow been deleted. So I'm sure it's not Forrest's fault. I'm sure it's mine. But this is a new account with probably a third of the data from last year. But anyway, you can see your kind of year summary, month, week, etc. And it doesn't sound like a lot, but actually that little incentive to keep your tree growing and living is surprisingly powerful. It's to the point where, I'll be running an hour-long timer over here, and I'll pick up my phone to do something, and it'll say, 10 minutes left, 9 minutes, 57 seconds or whatever. And I'll think, I can wait another 10 minutes. So I put the phone back down. And it's just that little bit of resistance. And it's something that other apps don't have, right? There are many apps and Chrome browsers and browser blockers, etc., that try to disable your browsing functions of certain sites, etc. Nearly all of them have a bypass button, which renders them useless. But even those that don't have this same component of creating something positive coming out of productive and healthy phone usage. And a little bit of game just makes it so much more fun. And so there are 2 ways I guess you can use this and how I use it throughout the day. One is for work-specific tasks. So I'll say, I think it'll take me 30 minutes to do this homepage while I build it. And I'll set a timer while I'm building the thing because I don't need my phone, so I might as well grow a tree. And it's really fun, by the way, if you find someone else who likes this and you can kind of compete. But the second way, and the way I use it most often, is to block out huge chunks of my day without phone usage. So I'll wake up at 6, 7, 8 o'clock in the morning, and then I will set a 2 to 3 hour timer so that my phone is not even an option. So I can't, because my sleepy Connor's mind wants to just scroll and do nonsense. But we all know that's not the best way to start the day. We all know that's rubbish. We all know it's a slow start. It's mediocre. There's nothing empowering about it. And so I'll set a 2-3 hour timer to disable that and remove discipline from the equation. And sometimes that timer will end at around 9 or 10 a.m. and I will set another one for another 2 to 3 hours, which takes me through the entire morning. And if I can go an entire morning without using my phone, odds are it has been a pretty good morning, right? There's still a lot of other things I can get distracted by. I wish Forest had a web browser version. But it's a good morning. The same thing, I'll set about an hour-long timer often when I take the dog out for afternoon fetch. And then around 6 or 7 p.m., I'll set another 2 to 3 hour timer to not use my phone in the evening and just disable that because it feels better. It's like, it's growing a tree over there in the corner. And that little bit of resistance keeps me from checking it at night and scrolling on Twitter or Instagram or whatever it is. And it's amazing, the little things, the little difference it makes. So that's how I really love to use it, is this large time blocking. And I think that's how you will love to use it as well. But I'm curious to hear your thoughts. So that's Forest app. Let me know if you know of this app, if you love it, if you hate it, if it doesn't work for you. Maybe I am the only one that the light gamification works on. But I'm curious to see how the rest of this community responds to this app. If you like this video, then go ahead and give a subscribe and a like down below, because this channel will continue to cover all kinds of tools and tactics and strategies, mindsets, frameworks, you name it, for starting and growing great businesses and just leading a productive and healthy life. Until next time, stay well.